Welcome to this edition of Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play, and we make exceptions to that rule when we have a sister like I do to my right, a native of Watts, California, Sister WAJEHA Bilal. Yes. Welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. And to my immediate left, you can look at me and tell there's something going on here. This is a baby boy, Brother Daude Sherrills, man. Yes. Welcome back to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
I was glad to be back.
As advertised today, we're going to take a look back, and then we're quickly going forward in terms of the community that spawned this brother. And the sister raised her family in Watts, California. So first thing I want to do is ask you, how long have you been a resident of Watts, California, Sister?
Since 1942.
That was before Hush was a puppy. Good God Almighty. Where did you come out here from?
Louisiana.
Louisiana. Oh, okay. You know, there was a wave of people, including Mr. Leon Garr, who he came out here, I think, at 44. And it was a unique population. Bill Russell went to Oakland, California. He got ran out of Louisiana. Mr. Garr did, too. And it's a large population of people from Louisiana here. What is the biggest change in your experience of living in Southern California in those many years that you've been here?
Let me see. It's the biggest change was when the drug warfare came along in the 80s, and then it's the homelessness at this present time.
Those are the two things that stick out in your mind.
Yes.
Now, I met your son in the early 90s when he showed his medal along with his brother Akila. And they linked arms with the great Jim Brown and came up with a historic peace treaty in 1992. What is it about your mother that makes you commit so much of your life and your treasure and your time to affecting social and economic change?
I mean, it's just a history within itself, you know. And when I had the opportunity to change my life around, because I was involved with gangs heavily, because we was all raised in the Nation of Islam, and when Elijah Muhammad had passed away, I found it kind of like, you know, when everybody kind of went in different directions. We stayed with our father for a second. Then when my mother came back, we stayed with her. And so we resided back inside the housing project developments where she was raised at. And at that time, we kind of like went away from religion and our formal basic way of upbringing through the Nation of Islam and turned to street life. And unfortunately, my mother had a nervous breakdown in a sense, and so that left our house, which was a single mother household raising 5 children, you know, out to tend for ourselves. And so we got caught in in a different way of trying to provide for ourselves and survive for ourselves. And the housing project was one of the most notorious places to grow up and live during the 70s and 80s and 90s, and right now, too.
Which housing project are we talking about?
We're talking about the Jordan Downs Housing Project developments in Watts, which is the house of the Grape Streets. And, I fortunately, was an ex-party active member. You never could say you not from there. And once you grow up in there, that's just a part of the culture. But I was one of those change agents who actually changed my life around through my mother. She was my example. She was my motivation because, she had joined back the religion, and I guess she accepted Islam back in 85 or 84 and stuff like that. And she used to dress like she dressed now. And we was kind of embarrassed for her dressing like that and walking around in the neighborhood. We used to like, take that off. But it became a focal point in our life, when I started going through my own personal transition to find my roof back in Islam, and through her example and through my father's example, and that kind of like got us on the path of where we at right now today.
What character traits do you readily see when you look at Daude that comes from your DNA?
I see my son, and the character rates that I see in Daude is our future and our future generation.
So, more specifically, both of your sons that I know, they have a way with a phrase, you know, and they have a almost blatant confidence that borders on arrogance, but it's not arrogant. You can pick up on that pretty quickly, but it's just they know what they know. At what point did you instill that confidence that I see in the two sons of yours that I do know?
Well, when I guess Daude was kind of nervous when he was talking about the 5 children. I have 10. I have 10 children, 54 grandchildren.
You got a tribe.
48 great-grandchildren and 14 great-great-grandchildren. And I became a Muslim in 1958, 57, 58. And under Elijah Muhammad. And we were raised a certain way. My mother was the first one from slavery. We came out here. We ran out of Louisiana, and we came out here because they had to run, you know, to get out of Louisiana. And my mother cried all the days of her life. And that was instilled with me in me when I was young.
Did you get to meet Malcolm X?
Yes, I did.
When he was out here in the 60s?
Yeah, when he came, before he became Malcolm X.
Before he became Malcolm?
Yes, I was the cook.
You never told me that, bro.
Oh, yeah. She cooks for everybody.
Oh,
She's been a head chef. I mean, it's Century City Hotel. She was a head chef up there.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Biltmore in Vegas? And right now in the community of Watts, she caters to all our events. And I mean, when she cooks, my sister cooks, everybody shows to eat.
Man, y'all got to add me to that list. I'm telling you, man. I got quite an appetite.
Yeah, I perfected the bean pie recipe with Brother Nathaniel, rest his soul, and some of the others, and Butternut Bakery, and all of them.
Wow. Every day is truly a school day here at Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, man. You just never know how much a blessing it is. See, the foundation of this show is models of possibility and best practices. And I'm pleasantly surprised sometimes to find that I'm able to have guests on my show that, you know, provide a level of enlightenment that's really important to our people, because we never really sometimes appreciate the people who walk amongst us, you know. So I didn't really have it on my list of questions, but we kind of went there. And it does help me to understand how these brothers comported themselves once I did meet them, and how they stood out from other cats who would be in that same circle. You know, the leadership qualities, the history that comes with being the son of a queen, man.
Yes,
you know, that's really. I'm sitting up here just kind of, you know, awestruck right now, you know, and I don't mind saying that, sister. It's an honor to know these things, and it helps for me to better understand why Daude is so driven, which takes me to what's going on right now in the community broadly known around the world as Watts. What are some of the challenges you are confronted with right now in terms of creating a space for people who of African descent in the community of Watts?
The state of Watts right now is in a transition. We're talking about in ethnicity. Latino population is now 60%. I think African American is about 40%. Economic wise, it's a boom. I want to say it's like a gold rush. So you have all these different outside, you know, opportunists who's coming in to try to gentrify and find their way back into Watts. Because Watts was once a dominant, controlled African American community prior to World War II, where hundreds of thousands of African Americans migrated into Watts, and the white flight and everything else took out. And so the challenges we're facing right now is that our community is not prepared for these opportunities. And that's a challenge for us because we was never, like you say, brought into the fold of sitting at the table when it comes to redevelopment and transforming this community to a more livable, more positive and more economic community. We was never thought to be a part of that conversation. And so you have the challenges for us is to unify ourselves and organize ourselves to be able to be a part of all this development that's coming into our community because of one, the 2028 Olympics. We got the Rams that's right up the street. Then we have the Chargers that's going out towards Corson. So this is going to be a boom, which is a population boom or a people boom. And so when you have these type of booms, I mean, you need these type of services, you need these type of housing, you need everything to be able to fulfill the needs a lot of these big market corporations are coming in with. You're going to have to fulfill all these needs. And so Watts and Compton and parts of Crenshaw, you see the development, you see the train systems, you see all this going on. But what you don't see is organized black folks coming up to the table and saying that, hey, this is our community, we've been here, and now it's time for us to have our fair share of this development. And so the biggest part for us is actually organizing us so that we can be able to participate in these developments that's coming in our communities.
So, Sister, on a couple of occasions in the last couple of weeks, I've been in Watts, and you have been instrumental in having, I think, dialogue with some of the principal economic drivers, if you will, of the Renaissance in Watts. How did you go about establishing rapport with the Union Pacific people, for example, and some of the other developers that are now encroaching on the community known around the world as Watts?
In 1989, I always cooked, and every year, twice a year, we would always feed the whole projects, and this lady came to me. We was cooking apple cobbler and peach pies and greens and fish. And she came at night and she said, hey, give me some of that. And I said, okay. I sold it to her, and everything, because I was trying to get my children out of there. Because this was in the height of the drug war was in 88. Mm-hmm. And this lady said, oh, give me that. They're going to shut you down in a minute, she said. I said, who's going to shut me down? I only work on the weekend. I make $3,000 on the weekend. $1,000 a day. And I feed the community. I was trying to get out of the projects, get my children out of there because they were big and, and everything, and the police brutality and stuff. So I was trying to get them out of there. So she was telling me about they're going to shut me down and all that. So I told her, I said, no, you just gone about your business. And so then the guy behind us said, don't talk to her. That's Assemblywoman Maxine Waters. I said, who is Assembly person? I don't know nothing but the president and the mayor. I said, no, shoot. They said, wait a minute. She said, I want to help you. I said, how can you help me? I don't know. No. She said, come here, I want to talk to you. I want to talk. I said, you have to wait. Until I finished working, So she came around there again, and they told me, really, talk to her. And so she started talking to me, then.
She was a congresswoman then?
No, she was Assemblywoman.
Oh, Assemblywoman, okay.
So I told her, I don't know the difference between Assemblywoman or whoever, because no one ever helped us, All we do is, be like downtrodden, and I always worked 2 jobs, taking care of my children. I ain't never begged for nothing, So she said, okay, come here. So she came and I started listening to her. So she said, I got a plan. She said, I had a dream about you before that I met you. She said, I dreamed that I was going to put this program in. I said, really? She said, yeah, I worked on this program all night, and everything. And I said, okay. So she told me she wanted me to, in the 6 housing developments then, to go and teach. She had this other lady, entrepreneurial Education Institute, and she said, she wanted me to train 40, help be with 40 people in the entrepreneurial training program. So I told her, all right. Then I had to go through 2 years of training and a lot of training and all of that. And then they said, after I went through her program, graduated from her program, then they introduced me to the train station, which our people own. It was 2 African Americans restaurants in Watts. Our people, my uncle, cousin, how we were double canned in. Okay, we still is,
Right.
But
Yeah.
well, he owned 2 hotels and he owned the other cafe, Reed's Cafe. So Bradley went there. All of them went there. We were, because our family were cooks, and we done all of that. So, so I went through programs. So the train station was empty and everything, and that's when Miss Frida Shaw had made her transition. So they put me in there, and so I've been in the train station now 25 years, and on the economic development project, I've been working to establish a vending district, and we were under Community Redevelopment Agency then, and I don't know what happened in that process. And they didn't tell me anything because I guess they didn't understand me. But I've always been in, when I went into the train station, that's when I met all of the people at MTA, Union Pacific. I worked I'm the person in the background. I worked on the 105 freeway in the think tanks, and I worked in a lot of think tanks. And I was the younger person under Miss Mobley and all of them, and doing all the footwork for them, and some of the writing and everything.
Did you ever do any interactions with Sister Juanita Tate?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You know her daughter, Noreen?
Do I know Noreen? I knew Juanita, but I didn't know Noreen.
Noreen's kind of took the mantle from her mom, and she manages the senior home on Central Avenue, and they got the Juanita Tate Marketplace right there on Slauson and what is it, Central? I believe it is. Yeah. And so it's interesting to pass down in our community that goes unnoticed.
Yes.
Because when we first started the show tonight, I was wondering if she was going to open up or not. But now she done left me breathless. And that's a beautiful thing, to learn that there are no accidents in terms of how, a lot of times Mark used to always tell me, he said, you're chip off the old block and the splinters got to fly.
Yes.
So when I look at you, and I better understand now that you standing on some broad shoulders here, know. So what is it right now that is the driving force in your ambition to affect social and economic change in the community of Watts?
Well, it's like, really representing us, which is the residents and the communities that's, I would consider like the poor. I represent the poor. I represent those who are homeless. I represent those who's in prison. I represent those who are in gangs, ex-gang members, the poor. That's my position within my community, to be the leader and the voice for these people. And I have been for over the past 30 years. Even when the city was dealing with the succession thing, when we was talking about succeeding, I was acting as the acting mayor to succeed from Los Angeles, because Watts used to be its own independent city prior to 1926, where we consolidated with the city of Los Angeles as our known representatives of the interests of the people of Watts. So historically, like I say, I know this history, so my position is always to represent the interests of the tax-paying citizens, majority African Americans and Latinos who are residents there, represent the interests of these people. So the greatest thing that's motivating and that got me driven is actually making sure that we're a part of what's coming within the Watts, the development, the Jordan Down housing project developments, a $1.2 billion infrastructure project. Now we are right now at the historical Watts train station, like my mother said, which is a train station where it's in prior to the housing laws changing and all the prior racism, that train station was the train station where black folks was allowed to get off at, because Union Station was segregated back in the days. So majority of the people who was migrating and coming in from Washington, the South, from all the South, had to get off at that train station. So historically, that's a touching place for me, not just representing what's here in the future, but that which had came before us. Like I said, my mother and them, and so. Really just taking that place and developing it, restoring that train station to a museum, and looking at the things that's tied to the Watchtower, looking at the homeless situation, the job situation, and really, like you say, just developing these historical sites to economic, opportunities for the residents of Watts, and being able to control these, because a lot of times, development comes in from the top. Whereas when it comes in, everybody comes in, it's all sitting around public money. You know what I'm saying? No private money, but public money, which is the taxpayers' money, who represent the community. Yeah. And so normally it happens is that the people from the top divide the pie. Then they come in, and like you said, they hire us as janitors or just workers and all this stuff, and we never have no equity in anything that's going on as far as in development. But this time around, we're going to ensure that the community is going to receive its proper equity in everything that's coming around, so just as well as I know, we're trying to organize and put together a strong team to ensure that this happens this time around.
So, who is the city councilman for the Watts community?
Joe Buscani.
Yes.
Is he Italian?
Yes.
Not that it really matters. I'm just trying to.
Well, Watts in the 15th district never had our own local resident as a representative in the 15th district. Never. They always came out of San Pedro. And Joe Buscani is one of those good old guys that's coming from the port areas, who's ex-LAPD or either someone who's a part of the union normally come out of that area to represent the 15th district, which include Watts. And so he's I guess fair to say, because he shows up, but. As far as in really tying into major development in our community, I don't know how fair he is when it comes to making sure that certain groups really have the equity and really be participating on a real level instead of on the W-2 side.
So, what's the temperature like between the black and brown components of the population in Watts?
Very good. Everybody speaks to me. I know one out of every 15 people there.
And at your level, what's the relationship like?
Like I say, Watts really never had that black and brown problem. Even the neighborhood that I'm from, Watts Barrio Grape, and that's a Hispanic. It was called Southside. There was some Southside. So a lot of our guys who grew up in the neighborhood hung around a lot of Latinos or Chicanos who have a long heritage in living in the community also. So we never had that real feud that you see other communities like having in Compton and different places, and
Long Beach
and stuff like that. Because like I said, Watts have always been, when it comes to African Americans, a stronghold within that community. And so, other communities who've been gentrified and people losing, numbers, or people moving out further and leaving these communities vacant for other ethnic groups to take control of the politics, are having these certain situations, because it's all about dollars and position and housing and opportunities. And so from Watts, we always looked at it like that. And so it's we always want to be a part of the front end of the negotiation. You know what I'm saying? And, a lot of people don't understand that Watts means that we ain't taking that shit. And we know our history, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, we ain't going to be sitting right here feuding with brown people, you know what I'm saying? And they're not going to be feuding with us. But like I said, there's also have to be social equity. Just because, like right now, the biggest problem that we have is that our numbers are declining, their numbers are rising. And a lot of times when you go into certain situations now, you kind of get that, if you're not Latino, you can't come in. When we're trying to offer them to be a part of our thing, they act like they don't speak English. So it's like we're experiencing some of that, but it it ain't led to conflict and division and hatred like in certain parts and other parts of the community. We kind of like got it under control and stuff like that.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then when we return, we're going to look at some of the specifics of how you're going about becoming a factor in the rebirth of Watts, if you will. So we'll be right back in a couple of minutes.
It's got me wondering
Which is which? I might as well go outside and dig a ditch. Ain't that a bitch? Just happened to be one of L.A.'s finest, the late, great Johnny Guitar Watson.
Yes.
Here we are back at Uncle Bobby's Country Corner where real men don't play, but we make exceptions for sisters that bring it like Sister WAJEHA Bilal has done. And it takes me to some sobering things that are happening as we sit here. We've had several national disasters in the last few weeks. In the midst of all of that, there's been an uproar over who's patriotic and who's not. And I'm going to ask you, just point blank, are these the natural disasters are just what they are?
Yes.
But all of this other stuff that has got people looking cross-eyed at folks from different persuasions, is it really about the flag, or is it something more sinister about what is driving the discourse on social media in particular, and just conversations around the water cooler right now? What's really going on?
Well, you know me, I always have my conspiracy theories about certain things and certain actions, especially as it relates to black folks and who speak for black folks and who's controlling our narratives and stuff like that. Because right now we all over the country we are in terrible shape. I mean, homelessness, joblessness, incarceration, mortality rate. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're in a terrible, terrible situation as a race of people. And my thing is that the slant drilling that's taking place. And we have a lot of great people who's got momentum, who's trying to champion the cause and eradicating a lot of these issues we face within our communities is being overshadowed by this so-called fake representation of what black folks want, the flag or the mirror of police abuse. I mean, these all things are just symptoms of a deep-rooted problem that's rooted in self-esteem, which a lot of us as black men and black women and black families are dealing with. We're dealing with low self-esteem, no value. And so when you have no value and you look in society, you respect those who have value as your leaders. And so we have the National Football League and all these celebrities and athletes who got all this power. But if you look at their track record in providing services going back to their communities, it's not there. You don't see them there. But when you see them posting as if they're concerned about the poor man, the poor black man, there's no correlation. And so you look at the sinister things behind who are utilizing these people to slant drill the real causes that we face within these poor communities all over the country. And so for me, it makes me mad and upset to see these people with this symbolism shit. And with no real substance. And so, like you say, I mean, that right there boils my blood because I'm like, man, if you put all these celebrities and athletes together, man, they represent a country of their own.
Economically, for sure.
Economically. Yeah. And they don't come back and do nothing for the inner city communities all over this country. I mean, they do things as symbolism, and 9 times out of 10, they don't go in their own pocket and give them this money. They don't go out there, like us. I go out of my pocket. This is my personal money. I'm not looking for nobody to come give me something to give to nobody. When you want to make a change, you do that from your heart. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to wait for no philanthropist to want to utilize your name and your face in your own community for you to do some good. If that was in your heart. So I look at the sinister stuff that's behind a lot of these motives and who's controlling our narratives when it comes to all this protest and stuff. And in reference to the these natural disasters, like I say, my whole thing in What I do within my community is based upon a concept of a natural disaster. They're always talking about the earthquakes and the fault line, these tsunamis, and the first people normally get hit is the poor people. And so as I build and develop and think about some of the things that I'm doing, it's centered around that. Because, sometimes, I got a house out in Palmdale, and, Palmdale is in higher elevation. And sometimes when I'm up on that mountain, I kind of look down in the valley and I'm like, man, I got my parents, my mother, them down there. And if a tsunami should hit one day late at night, it will be cut off because of, the water in itself. It hits the lower level of our communities first. And so, I decided to come back down here and, man, and trying to build, you know what I'm saying? Look at certain ways, whereas, we put it in our mind, just in case this happened, what are we going to do? So we have to build from those standpoint of view, and that's the way I'm dealing with these current situations within my community from a natural disaster standpoint of view, and also, just in general, ensuring that our people are not left behind in all these different developments going on in our community.
So, Sister Bilal, what keeps you getting up every day and forging ahead as though you just got started last week? What motivates you to stay engaged in affecting social and economic change?
I like doing this. I like, I like to cook. My mother always told me, go into some of what you want to do in life and something you like to do. So I like to cook. And I like to, I make money doing that, and that it's enjoyable. And when I'm getting older now, so I'm almost 80. So I told Daude and the rest of the family, I said, it's time for me to slow down. I said, y'all gonna have to come help in the economic development plight of the people here. Because, like I said, I know 1 out of every 15 people. If wherever I live at, I live in front of the Watts Towers, and if I leave my door open or drop my keys on the ground, the Latinos will get them and they go put them in my house. If my clothes are on the line, they'll go take them and fold them up and go put them on my couch. So I'm a part of this. I feel like this is where I live, and this is a part of me. And what really motivates me all these years was that the elders that came before me, they used to say, what about the trash over here, and cut the trees? And I said, I'm not going to be like that when I do this. And they say, well, and I catch myself doing this to my sons.
Yes,
I said, the city they don't listen. You can ask them all day long, and you have to get out there actually and go clean it up. So I'm tired of cleaning it up. Because I've been keeping the train station together and keeping all of it together all these years. And I told Daude and our executive director, I said, I'm tired. I can't do it no more like I used to. So they say, okay, we're going to come in. We're gonna make sure this is done.
This is really taking me home because my grandmother, Miss Ann McClellan, she used to run a after-hour joint called Miss Ann Cafe, right? And I'm feeling, a certain connection. No, you didn't know this one. This down in Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this down in Tennessee.
Where, in the woods up in there?
No, we wasn't in the woods. We was in the heart of the city,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she kept them skillets going, man, till 6 o'clock in the morning, boy, and they played cheating in the next room, but that's what was going on. But she had that same disposition. Some people in life figure it out. This is who I am, and I'm going to max it out. And I see that in your mother, and it reminds me of my grandmother, Miss Ann McClellan, because she had a third grade education. And just like you said, without blinking, you made $1,000 a day. I seen that kind of money made, frying chicken and selling spirits, And She made my life a lot easier, and with a disposition that was just about service, to her people and her community. And that's one of the things that I'm so glad to have you on the show today, because she's been dead 20 years now, but there's still evidence of that same fiber, that same character, that same link to generations.
Yes.
And as we grow older, it's the one thing that we cannot go forward without exposing young people to that sense of humanity.
Yes.
And that connectivity, generationally speaking.
Yes.
So I'm inspired by the fact that you're here today to remind me that it's not all gone. All right, and it's done rubbed off on this one here for sure, because he's at it like that, and that's encouraging too. And the next thing I'd like to talk about is, as the racial divide becomes more apparent, it's not like it ever disappeared, okay? But we reached a point now where, having grown up in the South, I didn't think I would see kids in 2017 running around with swastikas and, doing that Heil Hitler thing and just overtly being racially over the top. All right, and it goes back, in my estimation, to the fact that poverty is a serial killer, and it drives people into these places where you start looking at other poor folks and thinking they the problem, when the truth of the matter is ain't neither one of y'all got nothing.
Yes. And
the folks that got something has got y'all at each other's throat, to the extent that once you get past killing each other, which we ain't even really had that battle yet, but we get closer to it every day because it's just a terrible climate right now. And recently, we found out that we had a mutual acquaintance in a elderly white man by the name of Wayne Fishback. How important is it to have relationships with people who don't necessarily come from your same background, but seem to exhibit the kind of character that allows you to dismiss the fact that y'all are not the same persuasion? How important is it to start forging those kind of legitimate relationships?
Well, it's very important, because I mean, for me, I'm not a racist, and I don't look at color. I look at the action of a person more than the person's reflection. And so you judge a person by the action. And dealing with people outside, of my race, that's what I judge a person by. I don't look at because you're white, you're Mexican, I look at you based upon your actions, and that's what I draw my conclusion and make my decisions based upon. And so in dealing with, Mr. Fishback, Wayne, is highly important. Wayne kind of throws me back because I do a lot of research and study, especially during abolitionist movements and slavery.
You got a little John Brown.
Yeah, you got a little John Brown in her. And to come back and research, even his name, the Fishbacks. If you go back into the Fishbacks' histories, it goes all the way back into the first awakening, where we talking about the spiritual arrival that took place in the 1700s and the 1800s here in the United States, when we talking about the Methodists, the Baptists, the Church of Christ, and all these religion movements that spun the abolitionist movement, that spun the Republican Party, that started thinking about moral value instead of one man's dominance over another. And so that Fishback history dates all the way back into that. And so in researching that, I kind of found out that this man is more of a spiritual journey, and really like a modern day John Brown. And like I say, when you enchant and you pray and you ask God to bring you certain things, God sometimes brings things that you don't even recognize that's a benefit to you.
That's so fascinating, because you grew up in California, and Wayne is from North Carolina originally. And I didn't know until now the historical lineage of him. Yeah. He just felt familiar. We used to call him that good old white boy. Yeah. You know what I mean? He act like he don't even know he's white. It's like, because when he went to Chicago with me, you went to New York and D.C. with him. Yeah. That's the ultimate test, when you go into the community. And it's like, it's human nature. It's like dogs.
Yes.
Dogs can smell fear. and so can people, right? We in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Chicago. Matter of fact, a soldier had got murdered the day before he got there. I mean, I got there on a Saturday. He got there on a Sunday. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to even go over here, let alone take this white man over there. And he done already jumped on the cab and came over. I said, where you at? He said, I'm outside. I said, oh, God. Woo-wee. But at the end of the day, people, like you say, they will reveal who they really are.
Yes.
And you had mentioned the homeless situation. From what I understand, there's a 67% unemployment rate in the Watts community right now, which means that there's, without a doubt, a growing homeless population.
Yes.
And tell us a little something about the vision and the mobilization of people in the community to begin to try to chop away at the problem of homelessness, not only in Watts, because again we're looking at creating a blueprint.
Yes.
So kind of share with me some of the things that you're working on right now and how that addresses a problem that the whole country is dealing with right now, but we don't really, ain't nobody got their arms around it yet.
Yes.
That's for certain. So kind of share with me some of the things that you're dealing with in terms of addressing homelessness in Watts as well as the greater Los Angeles area.
Our first thing is because, like you say, the dire situation when it's centered around the unemployment and the hiking of the rent in these local communities. Everybody think of Watts as a poor community, and Watts is not a poor community. You're still going to pay, a market price for us in renting out there in that community, which sometimes is $1,500, $2,500 if you're not receiving government assistance. And so, as government assistance is kind of weeding out within that community. Most people don't want to accept it anymore. And so it's pushing a lot of people out, and it also is just creating this whole vacuum of homeless population because the people in that community are poor people. Not the community, but the people itself is poor. And so we, in assessing that situation, we over at Bill Plus decided that we want to become active in creating a change in addressing that whole situation. So a month ago, the mayor called the faith-based community down to LA City, to the city hall. I mean, all the clergy from all different denominations showed up, and I mean, it was a big show. And he announced, it was a big show. He announced this global day of compassion, and the whole thing was around homelessness, around Measure Triple H and Measure H, and pretty much, giving the religious community the opportunity to try to go in and solve a lot of these issues and stuff like that. And because we are religious people and we operate a nonprofit community-based organization in our community, we decided that we would, take on that in our Watts community. And so we started partnering with different, individuals as far as in housing. We looked at dome housing. We looked at container housing. We looked at
tiny housing.
Sure. We looked at a lot of numbers of ways that we can do some right now to kind of offset a lot of this, homeless, this growing homeless population within our community, which is, through statistics, it had increased 12%. And so right now we're in the process of identifying vacant lots, housing, and different things like that to come up with this whole thing around, doing temporary housing until we could come up with a permanent fix within our community. So it's three projects that we're focused on within our community. Is one is the homeless thing. Second is the beautification, which is manicuring and beautifying our whole entire community. And then two, looking at the education, because within our community also we have the lowest test proficiency scores in the city of Los Angeles that's concentrated in our school educational sector within our community. So these are the three things that we're looking at to trying to champion, to trying to have some immediate impact to change the outcomes of these things.
So, sister, as we have this conversation, I have to acknowledge I was out in Watts with Wayne earlier today, and he's very passionate about addressing the homeless condition holistically and long term,
Yes.
not just putting a Band-Aid on
Yes.
it and then just rounding them up and putting them over somewhere where they just kind of exist until it gets out of control,
Yes.
and then they have to push them somewhere else. I have to say that what I saw is evidence of the work that you put into that community, because the area right around the train area there,
Yes.
I saw one person that looked like they might have snuck and slept over there last night. But as far as I could see, I didn't see no evidence of homelessness. And I asked Wayne, I said, where they at? He said, man, they here, man. There's plenty of them, but I ain't seen them neither right around here.
Yes.
So what have y'all done in that immediate area around the train station right there?
Yes.
And I can see the watchtower was there, and what is it? The performing art, not the performing art. What's that?
Amphitheater.
Yeah.
Amphitheater, yes.
What are y'all doing over there that has kept that area so pristine?
I put a many programs in there. One program I have with Metro. I'm a certified representative of Riders on the Move Club, 62 years and older, where we try to get the seniors out of the houses and to come. And I showed them how to get the bus passes in case there's a national disaster or anything that happens, and to get them in touch with each other. And in that program, it's once a month. It's on the second Saturday in every month, and in there we give clothes away, and I feed all the people.
Yeah, so we normally go because our homeless situation is most of our people living in their cars and living in these campers, and so along Grandee and Graham, which is in between the two streets that's in between the train station, you have homeless people that lives in their cars and in trailers. Then across the street you have a homeless encampment that's right on the trail of the tracks in those bushes. So what we do is normally during the days when she have her event on those Saturdays, we go and let the homeless know you can come and eat. We have food, we have clothes, and we kind of cater to them and do an assessment and stuff like that, and still, like you say, working on, temporary solutions to trying to address it. Most of our homeless population is in the alleys of Watts. So if you go through certain alleys, we have a large homeless population in these alleys. Then, too, we have a lot of homeless situation around the 18 to 25-year-old range, because a lot of these kids come up
from foster program, then they hit that age of liberation, and then they just...
So they live on the trains. They live on the trains. They live in,
they ride the train.
They ride the trains. At the beach. They live in wherever they can live at. Downtown, if you look at downtown L.A., majority of those residents down there is from Watts. And so a lot of them go downtown L.A. They live on the trains. And so, we have a very large homeless population for the residents that's there. You know what I'm saying? The former residents that was there who don't know nothing else but Watts. And so they trying to stay moving and stuff like that.
And me and Wayne was having this conversation earlier today in terms of compartmentalizing the homeless population, because clearly there's three groups. There's the people who just fell on hard times and they kind of new to the streets, but they've been out there for maybe a year or two, and they haven't evolved into that just hopeless homeless population. Then you got the mental health group that started back in the 80s when they closed all the mental institutions. And then you got this emerging population that you're talking about, young kids 18 to 25, and then women with children. That is a huge population here in Southern California. And we were talking about figuring out how to break down who can we help first that would have the most impact, and stem that tide, and then be able to start figuring out how you can integrate social services and all of these other people who get paid to deal with this, who basically just kind of brush over the situation because it ends up impacting our communities the most. But what's interesting about the homeless population, I was in a meeting in Compton a few weeks ago with a city councilwoman, and Wayne had sent myself and Rock and John Bollinger to this meeting to discuss some of the same issues that we're dealing with in Watts and in Leimert Park. And this councilwoman told me that she had been contacted by the Beverly Hills Housing Authority or whatever and said, look, I know y'all got problems over in Compton with homeless, and we need y'all to send somebody over here to help us deal with the homeless population in Beverly Hills. And I was like, what? Beverly Hills got a homeless problem? Oh, my God. So whether people want to realize it or not, this is no longer just a inner city issue. It has creeped into all the little hovels around greater Los Angeles. And as I begin to wind up the show tonight, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fact that this configuration would not be possible but for my exposure to the great Jim Brown, who introduced me to you many years ago.
Yes.
And it's never going to be too much that I can say about the work that Jim has put in and inspired the work that you do and that I do. And you're a contemporary of Jim, so you've known him longer than any of us have. I didn't know that till today. But
yeah, they got the pictures out of the house.
Yeah,
Jim,
we got Jim back in the '60s when he went to one of our families, the Reed's Cafe. We got him in one of those pictures.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Jim,
and it was in my trunk.
Oh, wow.
And they said, "Oh, what is this?"
Oh, man, it's just so heartwarming to be able to have you guys come into the studio today, because this is a movement.
Yes.
And there's pieces of this puzzle that we're still assembling. Yes. And I told you when you came on the show the day that you was my co-host, we had Antoine Fisher in here.
Yes.
And this is a much better setting here because he lost his form that day, right? Because Antoine's got a story that'll make your mouth drop.
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah.
And I'm looking at him like, man, come on, man, get in the show. But I ended up having that experience today, man, because with Mother Bilal opened up, I was like, I didn't know that, Yes. So again, this has been a very, I think, indicative show of why I do this every week and why you do what you do. And sister, man, I got work to do, man. That's all I can say, because you're so far out in front. It looks like I caught you, and actually, she lapped me. I'm so far behind, it ain't even funny. And as we begin to wrap up tonight, I think it's important that people understand that there's no sense in looking for somebody to come and get us.
Yes.
Especially when we don't have to. There's so many treasures, like the movie Hidden Figures.
Yes.
Sister Bilal is an example that it wasn't just the folks you see on the screen that have been quietly sowing in the communities and changing and saving lives. And I salute you, sister, for the work that you continue to do. And I'm inspired by the walk of your son. And let's go to work, man, and make this thing happen. And as we close out tonight, I once again want to thank Sister O.G. Portis for providing a space for us to have these kinds of discussions. And she continues to toil in the vineyards herself in the same spirit that propels Sister Bilal. And as I close out tonight, I want us to understand, as bad as it gets some days, just keep living.
That's it.
And keep, finding something to do, something to look forward to, and somebody to love. And if you're blessed with a morning light, embrace that sunshine and try to share some joy with somebody else along your way.
That's it.
And thank you, brother. Thank you, sister, for letting me be myself.
Yes.
Again. Until next week, we're out of here. Peace and blessings.